Ki khubor ka Batesi TV.
Ka umdi basnyam bat penjaslian. Rupa Premium Meghalaya. Ka East West Group of Institution Bangalore. Ka khot admission nagamta ka nursing but paramedical course. Ka bala ithu da ka Indian Nursing Council. Ka buy admission ka badunatam. But she's pa percent ka jingyokam. Pila ru ban apply da ka education loan.
Ka ICA ka Pyntreikam ya ka laway jongpi. Nakabinta ka tuition but coaching ka babhatam yapi. Yasno but ka ICA.
Ka All India Safe Education Committee kalapan pawi ka jing songkhya halo ka jingwan ra jong Sorkar pedeng ya ka National Education Policy House nam arjar arpho. Khlem de Ïasyllok ik Sorkar jalla ya ki pat ba ya ki ken hun ba pher habasna ya ka policy. Hak arpo artarik jemang arhajar apsan ki de khot jong ka Aisec. Kila pelat pat ba ya ka draft People Education Policy ban Tyrwa sa Sorkar ya ka jing ajing mut nakabanta ban penbha bat ban penjana ya ka puli ka puthi hakari India baro ka wei bat ka ban bujuli ya ka National Education Policy jong snam arhajar arpo.
In today's program, the All India Safe Education Committee will be releasing this draft People's Education Policy as an alternative to the NEP 2020. And as we know that the Union government, which was in power in the year 2020, adopted the National Education Policy 2020 at a time of the COVID-19 pandemic, only through a cabinet decision without placing it on the floor of the parliament for meaningful discussion and debate. However, the All India Safe Education Committee, being of the firm opinion that this NEP 2020 will destroy the entire education system in India and is in the forefront of the struggle against the NEP 2020. And today, as we mark the birth anniversary of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who pioneered the Indian Renaissance movement and who paved the way for modern education in India, the Meghalaya chapter of the Aisec is also releasing here in Shillong, the state capital of Meghalaya, and simultaneously in all the state capitals of the country, as well as in the national capital, New Delhi, we are releasing the draft People's Education Policy as an alternative to the NEP 2020.
One of the issues which I feel very strongly about, when we talk about education, we need to talk about quality education. And quality education can only come up when we have trained and qualified teachers. This is an issue, I think, that this people's policy needs to be emphasized upon. We need trained teachers. We need people who can teach, not just to parrot and to ask people to come to tuition for getting their education. Aside from that, another issue, last issue perhaps which hasn't been spoken too much, is that this people's education speaks about the language policy in education. How can we have continuous languages in education? Just two. Can we have the regional language and English? Because we are looking at education which can create a scientific, creative, questioning mindset in the minds of a student. And for an education that is global, not contained just to within a country or a region. Thank you.
I think it was very, very comprehensive. It has taken into account every aspect of education and how it should be taken to the last village of this country and of the state of Meghalaya. We know the condition of education in our state. We also know that there are several schools that are running as co-schools. We know that there are schools with one teacher. We know there are schools with, I mean, they're just schools for name's sake. So within this, within the paradigm of this Save India, All India Safe Education Committee, we would expect that the state government would take a call on, normalizing education in the form of by taking a look at all those educational institutions that are non-functional, to make them functional, and if they cannot be made functional, they should be closed. And also in the larger context, we know that with the present regime, education has been highly communalized. Some chapters have been taken away, some chapters have been added without any public discussion, and which is one reason why they perhaps released this policy, the NEP 2020, during the COVID regime. So any policy, any public policy that has not been debated and discussed cannot be passed the way this has been passed by the cabinet, not by the Lok Sabha. So we want to ensure that our children, for the future, they get an education where they are able to ask questions, where things will not be implanted on them, theories will not be pushed down, where they will have the liberty to question, and we actually want to create that kind of educational atmosphere where students will be allowed to question, because without questioning there can be no education. Communication will be just a one-sided thing. So I hope that the committee will be able to take this forward, to push this not only to the state government but first to the central government, because it has to be, whatever legislation has to come to the central government. Of course, education is also a state subject, so the states that wish to do away with the NEP can do away with it. Some of the states in South India have not accepted the NEP. So I hope that the state of Meghalaya also will follow this, rather than the very hurriedly implemented NEP 2020, which has found most colleges especially unprepared. Even today, they don't have the infrastructure to have the full-fledged NEP programs.
Some of us who are into the field of education, we understood that the new education policy is communalizing education, it is commercializing education, it is corporatizing education, and it is also centralizing education. So we have been critical of that from the beginning, and say writing and talking to people, stating all the problems which may crop up once we introduce new education policy. But the question is, criticism is not enough. If you say NEP is bad, then what should be the education? What kind of education we need, which is better for us? That we should be able to state. And that is what the Aisec, All India Safe Education Committee, has come out with. It is coming out with a people's alternative to NEP. And it is showing where we need to concentrate and where we need to focus. If you see the document, you will find a description of everything. Why do we need this people's education policy? What should be the guiding principles and values that should govern education? How should there be the structure of education? What kind of preschool education or school education or higher education or teachers education that we should have? And it also talks about the financing of part of the education policy, and shows how the government of India and also the state governments are reducing funds, allocations for
education and talking very big things about improving the ways of education. So we also talk about democratization. It also talks about democratization of education policy making bodies where we should include teachers, students and parents representatives in these bodies. So like that we have made a very critical assessment, and on that basis Aisec has come out with this draft. But when we say draft, it is still a draft. Our intention is not to say that it is final and it will be or it should be accepted in toto by the governments. We are not like NEP, the government which took the decision merely on the basis of a cabinet decision. We want that this draft should go to the nook and corners of the India. Everybody should discuss about it, contribute to that, update it, and concretize it in the context of the needs of each of the states. You know, the state education is not same in all states. We are at different levels of development. Keeping that in view, what kind of education is appropriate to each of the states? That is what the people in each of the states should discuss and debate. So also it says many things which I just summarized here, where we say that the government should allocate adequate this one budget for the education. We said 10% of the central budget and 20 to 25% of the state budget should be allocated for education. When it says that we should address the problems of social disparities so that we can promote education and ensure that it reaches to the marginalized section.
You know, I've always been one who believed in development. And development can never take place without an infrastructure. And when we look at education, it is a social structure. It is a social infrastructure. Now, for whom is this infrastructure built? First, we have to be very clear about that. Does it concern only students and teachers? Or does it concern parents? Does it concern families? Does it concern the community as a whole? And if we accept this, that this is an infrastructure on which the whole of society depends on, how can a single cabinet sitting decide on a policy? I fail to understand why it was not discussed. And for infrastructures, to my mind, for infrastructures to be sustainable and for education to be sustainable in this country, we need a bottom-up approach towards how this policy should take place, not a top-down approach by a few persons. Therefore, it is very encouraging to have this All India Safe Education Committee come up with this new challenge towards this education policy of the 2020 and to call it a people's education policy of 2025. We need to engage people. We need these sort of engagements. We need discussions so that it can be taken to Parliament and discussed. It can be discussed in the states. Fortunately for us, education falls under the concurrent list. So therefore the states also can take a part. We can discuss as we're discussing here. So let us just mention, I'd like to mention a few points where this people's education policy seems to be very, very relevant to India, the India of the 21st century, as we look forward on how do we proceed ahead. It says that we should do away with this narrow communal approach of promoting narrow communal ideas and by prioritizing profit motive considerations of the 2020 NEP. and I fully agree with this. The education policy cannot be a Hindutva policy. It has to be a policy of the whole, for the people of the whole of India. Secondly, just a few points. One of the issues which I feel very strongly about, when we talk about education, we need to talk about quality education. And quality education can only come up when we have trained and qualified teachers. This is an issue, I think, that this people's policy needs to be emphasized upon. We need trained teachers. We need people who can teach, not just be parent, and to ask people to come for tuition for getting that education.